Ping, it's 7 o'clock, and I like to reward those who are on time. So, welcome to the Thursday Night Tarot Talks. Our subject tonight is the 7 stages of spiritual unfoldment, which are depicted in the last 7 tarot keys, from the devil to the world, from bondage to freedom. So, these 7 keys all across the bottom here illustrate to us the 7 stages of spiritual unfoldment. Now, what does this spiritual unfoldment amount to? Before we dip into that, I'm going to back up a little bit about this is the esoteric wisdom of Israel. This is not Judaism. In fact, the traditional Orthodox Jews think that we Kabbalists are insane, and from their point of view, we might be. The Orthodox, most every working religion has 3 levels. The Orthodox level, or where you read the written word of someone else who had a vision of God and you follow the rules. That's the outer form of religion. The next form is the middle stage, is for those who want to understand why. I mean, why shouldn't you kill? And you learn about things like the law of karma, and you start to understand the reason. And those who have a scientific bend of mind. And that's for the Jews, it'd be the study of the Torah and the Talmud especially. And then in every religion, there's also those who want direct experience of God themselves. They don't want to only read about someone else who had a vision of God. They want to have their own vision of God. Those are the mystics, and the Kabbalists are the mystic Jews. Well, I put this link in again in the Thursday Night Tarot as the most recent one, so I hope they'll find it. Yes, I was using Facebook Live before, and that had all kinds of problems. So now I'm using YouTube. So we switched over. How can we tell them that? Let's see. Can we put in? Nancy, if you can see where that is on Facebook Live, where it talks about the old link, and drop in the new link, that would be wonderful. I'm trying to do that myself right here for a minute. Well, there's the new one. That's the most recent one. You think they'd look, but let's see if I can find where's the invitation to the Facebook Live? If I can find that and put this in there, then maybe we'll capture a few more people. A few minutes while I'm doing that. Okay, I've put that 3 different places now on Thursday Night Tarot, so I'm going to drop out of that and come back to us. Hi, Kay. I'm glad you found the link. Hi, Deborah. I got a few more folks in. So I was backing off and talking a little bit about Israel. We're the esoteric wisdom of Israel. Now, there was this, who was the guy who wrestled with God and got renamed Israel? Israel has a couple interesting meanings. One of the meanings of Israel was we who wrestle with God. It's an interesting idea, wrestling with God, not accepting any literal teachings without wrestling, sorting them out, chewing on them, thinking about them. And the other meaning of Israel is he shall rule as God. That he is you and me. This refers back to also when Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount was asked, what is the destiny of humankind? And he said, each of you shall be even as the Lord in heaven. Now that's a high destiny. And that's not included in a lot of regular church teachings. But your destiny is to be even as God in heaven. Now, how can that be? Well, think about a wave in the ocean. A wave is not a separate being. It arises out of the ocean and crashes and becomes the ocean again. And each of our individual lives are like that wave on the ocean. We arise out of the one being who is all this, experience as if separate for a lifetime, and go back into that one being like a wave crashing down. And that is a good model for the nature of reality. It seems that everything that is one living being. It's a basic Kabbalistic teaching you find in the Kabbalion, that the universe is mental. It's a mental living being. And it's said that creation comes about through a combination of visualization and sound vibration. Thus, we see in the Old Testament that God speaks the world into being. And God said, and there was. Vayomer Elohim yehi or, vayehi or. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. So this spoken word is very, very important. These letters that make up the alphabet of the 22 letters we see here before us on the keys, these represent the principles of existence. Everything that is can be ascribed to one or more of these symbols. And in a sense, each of the tarot keys is an attempt to make a pictorial rendering of the meaning of that letter. And when asked where the Kabbalah comes from, the authorities are of one mind about that. You can't just toss it out. They say basically the angels gave it to humankind. Well, that's a pretty large statement, that angels gave us this wonderful tool for helping us get back home in consciousness. Now, the promise of the mysteries is that anyone who will put themselves assiduously to the training will experience conscious immortality, awareness of the eternal nature of your very soul. That's a large promise. We'll get to that. That promise is answered here in key 20, the next to the last one, where the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, the man and the woman, have a kid. Now that's new, and the conscious mind can see the angel. So this is the vision of God face to face. That's the experience where you go, oh my God, I am eternal. A dear woman at BOTA in Los Angeles had this vision and spoke to me. She was not bragging, she was astounded. And she said to me, I had a vision of my inner nature last night. And she looked just like utterly amazed. She said, oh my God, I'm really beautiful. It was so delightful to see her astonished at her vast beauty, looking at it from a level of soul. So let's look at these 7 stages of spiritual unfoldment. Let's look at the whole ones. First of all, you see here the devil with an inverted pentagram, and the only light in that key is a little torch he's holding upside down and lighting the man's tail with it. Interesting one. The next tarot key, we see the sun up at the top right corner, sending a lightning bolt down and knocking the crown of false will off the tower. And then we see that star moving into the center and aligning up the 7 stars around it, the 7 chakras. And the next key, that becomes a much bigger sun, and now it's a sideways view with this key of the moon. The next key, the sun, we have a full-on face forward. And the next key, it becomes an angel. And the third key, you step into it, and you are the one who's in the middle at the end. So this is wonderful symbology of the path of return, of the growing light becoming animated until you discover it's you. Wonderful models. Now let's look at these keys one by one. Let's look at this scary one first here. Let me get my glasses on so I get things right. Where are you, you beastie? Ah, yes. Boing, there he is. The great bugaboo. The devil of exoteric Christianity. What is going on in this horrid-looking creature? Well, this is the first stage of evolution. You notice that the conscious and subconscious mind, the man and the woman, are chained to his throne. But we see right away, the throne is just a square. And several other tarot keys, the Emperor and the Hierophant and various others, are sitting on a cube. The devil is standing on a square. So all we're seeing here is the superficial appearance of things. Indeed, the letter Ayin on this card means both eye, which sees, and appearance. So when you look out at the world from your immature intellect, you see things like eagle's legs and goat's head and bat's wings, and all those things exist. All those things exist, but it takes a kind of a twisted imagination to put them together in this way. So what does this represent? In this state of bondage, there's a little key here to notice right away. The chains are large enough that the man and woman could take them off if they ever came upon the idea of doing so. And they are bestialized. They have horns at this stage. So they are judging by appearance only. Let's talk a little bit about this key. The external superficial appearance of things is what's represented here. So interesting that the bondage of ignorance results from accepting the limitations of appearance as being all there is. If you look out and just perceive with your senses and you think that's all there is, life looks pretty awful. There's suffering and there's death and there's horrid people doing malevolent actions, and it looks like there's a devil behind the scenes. Point here is that it takes a twisted imagination to put together aspects of reality and create this devil, but when you do, you are enchained to it. So interestingly, the function of consciousness ascribed to this key is mirth or laughter. And laughter is usually provoked by incongruity. When you look at the way things look and the way you think things are, seems incongruous. It doesn't go together. There's an old sun god hymn from Egypt. The priests go forth at dawn and wash their hearts with laughter. Something we all might do well to emulate. When things look like the devil, that which dispels ignorance more than anything else is laughter, being able to chuckle at the seeming appearances of things. So this is our astrological sign of Capricorn, governing the knees. And it's like we're brought down to our knees by terrible sense of bondage and personal insufficiency. And the Capricorn people are studious, quite serious. Some tend to be a bit quiet and inclined towards materialism. They're extremely practical. I mean, great business people. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. That's going to be the last key, the world. And as Mars exalted, the tower. So all in this row here, we have Saturn at the end, and Mars is the second one as the ruling and exalted planets in Capricorn. The intelligence ascribed to the devil is the renewing intelligence. It's actually what brings forth new ideas and adaptations. Now, the incongruity between the seemingly bondage and pain and difficulty and suffering involved in human life and the intuition that we all have deep within our soul that somehow that's not the truth, that we are destined to be free of all limitation. Remember, ye shall rule as God. The promise of the mysteries is that every individual soul shall attain salvation. Now, this is in contrast to the exoteric Christianity, which makes an eternal division between God and the devil. The esoteric people say that that is seeming separation of plus and minus is a product of the mind rather than of reality. And there's a little hint in this tarot key of the devil. Notice he has a white beard. Well, there's a little hint for you. Who else has white on their hair and stuff? Have a look around in the tarot and start to figure it out. And the pentagram is upside down. The pentagram, the symbol of mind, is upside down. So this is a reversal of how things actually are. So the devil is the adversary, that which seems to be against us. And we wonder, well, what is it that keeps me from expressing the inner feeling, inner freedom that I feel? So this is what humans, when they're trying to figure out what is it that holds me back and gives me difficulty. But remember that Jehovah in Isaiah 45 said, I, the Lord thy God, create both good and evil. So that God is the creator of this seeming separation that we call the devil. And there's something a little bit deeper in here for those of you in the gematria, this use of adding up the numbers of old special Hebrew words. 358 is the number of Messiah. Mim, Shin, Yod, Chet. So, but this is also the number of Nashash. This is the tempter who tempted Eve. Now, that's a very important point here. A very subtlety that there's an inner correspondence of meaning between the tempter and the Messiah. And we'll put it out more directly for those who have ears to hear. The devil is God as he is misunderstood by the wicked. It is your mind that creates this horrid figure. But when you do, you're enslaved to it. So the devil is kind of the polar opposite of the angel shown in key 14 over here. And has the same man and woman down below as the angel here. They're up in key 6, the lovers. We see Raphael. Kind of looks like this key, like key 15. Here's the man and woman underneath some horrid figure. And here in key 4, temperance, we have the holy guardian angel Michael. And look at the devil's hand up here. It has a sign of Saturn on it. It's interesting in his lines, but he's looking like saying, "Stop! What you see is all there is." That's what the hand is like. You don't have to look any further than this. What sensation reports is the whole truth. Well, that's not the whole truth. So the devil is a human product. He has a belly button. He is a product of man's ignorance. Faulty observation and superficial reasoning make you imagine that there must be some terrible figure that's out to get you. This is the state of conscious bondage. The devil personifies this false conception that man is bound by material conditions, that he's a slave to necessity, a sport of chance. In truth, the forces of the universe that seem to be against us are here to serve us, and we can use them to liberate ourselves. And so the devil exists in the sense of the sensation, the reports of our physical senses and how we interpret them. But because they irk us, and we go, "No, I don't like this," it leads us to having a chance to get out of this stage. Now, what brings us out of this first stage of bondage? This one, key 16, the next one, the tower. Key 16 shows the sun up in the sky and a lightning bolt coming down, interesting, shaped like the tree of life, and knocking off the crown of false will from the Tower of Babel. Remember in the Old Testament when God said, "Go ye forth and tell people about me," and they said, no, we're going to build a tower so we can get closer to God. Interesting. The tower has 22 levels in it, 22, like the 22 keys. It's made of the false use of words. In the Tower of Babel, remember when they fell out of the Tower of Babel, they couldn't understand each other, and they went off into different lands to find people they could understand them. So when you're in this level of ignorance, you can say what you will, people don't understand you, and you don't understand them. So the crown of false will, what does false will mean? False will means that the awareness that you are an individual self that's separate from everything else. And when that gets knocked off you by a flash of illumination, it's enlightening, but it's pretty terrifying. You're the conscious mind, the subconscious mind falling from the tower to earth. So interestingly, the subconscious mind has a crown on. So something very special happens at this stage for the subconscious mind. Here we are in the tower. The letter on tower, notice this little curly Q inside of what the letter, otherwise the letter cough, like on key 10. This curly Q inside is the tongue, which is the meaning of the letter Pe, which is the letter on this key of the tower. So it refers to the mouth as an organ of speech. So remember the old occult saying, "Gold cometh from the north." And the north is, for us in the northern hemisphere, is the place of darkness, where the most dark of all places, but you have to get to the north in order to get gold. So you have to have this awakening before you can awaken the inner gold. So this particular tarot key refers to the planet Mars. And again, the violence shown here and the red color, it always is a Mars vibration. The Mars vibration is active in sight. It's also the force that finds expression and reproduction. So Mars rules both Aries, vision, key 4, and Scorpio, key 13, reproduction. So you can think of the Mars force as being the electrical energy that's generated in the lobes of your brain, that's active in vision, and gets sent down through the nerves to your muscles to contract them to carry out your will. Another aspect of the Mars force is will. So that the Mars force is active in Aries and active in Scorpio. Let's look at that for a minute. When Mars is active in Aries, you're using your rational mind. Reason is one of the functions ascribed to the emperor. When Mars is in Aries, you're actively thinking and creating thought children and sorting through ideas and using your rationalization. And when Mars, that's called the day throne of Mars, is Aries. The night throne of Mars is Scorpio, the reproductive organs. What's hinted at is the same force that is active in vision and in thought is the same force which is active in reproduction and bringing forth of new forms in Scorpio. Now, Mars can only be in one of its thrones at a time very well. So here's a practical one. In my psychological work, I worked with some women who had difficulty experiencing good relationships with men and had some bad experiences in the past to get over. And I've often told them, if you find yourself in the arms of a man on the dance floor or other ways, and he's getting more aroused than you're ready for, then you need to bring the Mars energy from Scorpio back up to Aries by involving him in speaking about something he's really interested in. And as he gets the energy into his head and starts talking about it, his reproductive organs will cool off and he'll be able to be distracted from where he was headed before. So it's a practical use of this astrological knowledge. If a man is getting a little hot and bothered and you aren't ready for that, get him to talk about something he's interested in. Move Mars into its day throne in Aries. All of these planets have a pair of opposites assigned to them. And Pe, Scorpio, the Tower, and Mars here, the pair of opposites are grace and sin, or beauty and ugliness. Grace and sin. Now, here's a little one for you. Sin is not what we think of. Sin is actually, the word in Hebrew comes from an archery term, which means to miss the center of the target. So sin isn't a bad thing. It just means you aren't very good at it yet. You haven't learned how to do things correctly yet. So hitting the mark is a manifestation of beauty. So beauty and ugliness, grace and sin. So when you can correct your errors, and notice, in order to hit the mark, you have to practice a lot. And that's an important point, that the precursor of the Savior in all the mythologies of the world is the fool. In order to become good at anything, to become adept at anything, you have to start out before you know anything. You have to look. I'm a guitar player. When you start playing guitar, it sounds lousy and it hurts your fingers and you're discoordinated. And you have to keep practicing and practicing for quite a while before it starts sounding good. And that's true of any endeavor you take up, that you have to be willing to be the fool if you're ever going to become good enough to master it. The tower here represents something, this fire coming down from heaven. This is a flash of enlightenment. That's an example of Paul on the road to Damascus in the Bible. He was Saul, the Christian killer, and he got hit by the light of God, like in this key, and changed his name to Paul and became a convert and a Christian. And this flash of illumination is also often quite disturbing to your conscious opinions of things. When you begin to study Kabbalah and print these pictures into your brain, you will start having experiences, little flashes where for an instant you feel how everything is connected and is not separate like it appears. And these lightning flashes at first will be quite startling and quite destructive to your old self, but it takes a while for your consciousness and literally your physical nerves to be able to handle that high current. So luckily, the first flashes are real quick, like a flash of a light bulb, a fraction of a second, where you come back to being yourself so fast it's hard to remember, but they get printed into you, and you gradually, your nerves get stronger and stronger so you can handle a little bolt that lasts a fraction of a portion of a second, or maybe a whole second long, until you can begin to have the resistance of the nervous system in your body capable of manifesting higher consciousness without burning out. The tower here has kind of the same meaning as the garden and the magician, the throne of the emperor, the turning wheel of the key 10, the field in key 13. It's the subconsciousness, the root consciousness, the thing that takes form as middle images and later as physical forms. So that's an important thing. What you image has the potential to become a physical truth. That's why it is so important to not focus your power upon negative imagery. I was speaking with one of you recently and saying, although it's true that at our age there are physical ailments that beset us, we should understand them best we can and do what we can best with them, but not focus our energy on them too long, lest we make them even stronger. People who are focusing about how bad things are notice everything that's bad, and it confirms their bad opinion. So it's very important to not deny that there's negativity in the world, but to withdraw our emotional intensity from it and put it into the positive forms that we wish to see manifest. Now, that's not easy. That's not what the media suggests to you. What sells newspapers is the disasters. So, but it's up to you to call forth from the quantum field of possibilities the desired states that you wish to see manifest, and not simply fall into the habit of following the patterns that the media feeds to us, which are could cause great problems if we don't work against them. Now, why is the woman wearing a crown here? I think one of the reasons is that under normal circumstances, the subconscious mind is kind of the slave of your conscious mind. I'm speaking inside of each one of us. The subconscious mind elaborates whatever thoughts the conscious mind has. So if you're thinking about illness and disease and pain, then your subconscious mind goes, oh, well, let's create some more illness and disease and pain. That's the model. That's what I'm being given. So the subconscious mind feeds back to you elaborations of what you think about. And here, the lightning flashes hit the tower and blown the conscious mind out. He goes, oh my God, I was wrong about everything. And the subconscious mind goes, oh my God, free at last. Free of being the slave to the conscious mind. Now, what's a practical use of this? Somewhere up in the advanced BOT lessons, we're given a little vow to make, that we free the subconscious mind from our slavery to following every bloody thought the conscious mind has. And I do it something like this. I say, subconscious mind, you are henceforth free from following the suggestions that I give you unless they are in harmony with the superconscious wisdom to which you are in perfect contact. Look up here in the lovers. The man is clouded out and can't see the angel, but the woman can see the angel and the man can see the woman. So the woman has direct access to the superconscious wisdom. In fact, we receive it in our conscious mind via her when we are in a clear state. So subconscious mind, you are free from following my suggestions unless they are in harmony with the universal life to which you have perfect access. If I give you suggestions that are out of harmony with that, simply ignore them and give me other material that will be more in harmony with that and reflect the superconscious wisdom back to me instead. And, to make that a regular effort, say, I realize that I'm giving some negative suggestions to myself, so let's turn that around. Okay, what about here more? So this tower is built of the wrong use of language, of words. The tongue is the organ of speech. We're talking about the wrong use of words. What is it you're doing that's enslaving you with words? And how can you get free of that? Well, in the next key, we have our answer. Here is the star. Hi, honey. There is this divine mother, Isis, shown, unveiled. So this is the key which represents the principle of meditation. Meditation is a subconscious process, but notice that the conscious mind is shown here as the red bird, the ibis, standing on the mulberry tree. But the ibis is simply observing. He is not the active power in this state of consciousness of meditation. The conscious mind doesn't sleep, doesn't space out, doesn't look somewhere else, is very attentive, but is still. The pointness of this stillness. When this stillness occurs, the waters of consciousness. Look at this lovely letter Mim that makes the little lake that she's standing on. The letter that's here on the hangman, Mim, which is the shape of the water pool. She's standing upon the surface of the water. And here she's pouring water on the land and pouring water on the water. What does that mean? Well, this pouring of the waters of consciousness back upon the material world breaks out into 5 streams representing the 5 senses. So meditation purifies the reception through the 5 senses. When the waters of consciousness are poured back upon themselves, they become firm enough to stand on. I remember when I was 15 and first beginning to meditate, the first time that the waters became firm, it felt like the space between the 2 sides of my skull was galactic wide, unbelievably huge. And that whatever consciousness was that I was in that state, it filled all that space. So it's kind of the opposite of the way things look, just like the hangman representing Mim. Here it looks like he's in complete bondage, and yet the glow around his head shows that he's in utter freedom. So the opposite of appearances. The letter on this key, Tsadi, means fish hook. So that's what's used for catching the fish. The fish, remember, is death noon back here. So this is the fish hook that brings the fish up out of the water. So to bring the fires of Scorpio down at the reproductive center up into the higher chakras is accomplished by meditation. Also, we use a fish hook when we're fishing for an idea. Now, occult meditation is different than Eastern meditation. Eastern meditation, you withdraw your senses from the physical world and try to still your mind and calm and get really sensitive until you perceive the divine presence within you. Western occult meditation is different. You might compare it to problem solving. In Western occult meditation, you formulate a question. You use your conscious mind and explore the area you're trying to understand as deeply as you can. But then you realize there's something I don't know yet, and you want to get to it. And so you formulate a question, and that formulated the question you put onto the fish hook of Tsadi, and you lower it into the waters of your subconscious. It's literally fishing for truth. The Hebrew word Tsadi also means conception. So it's this transforming of mental things into physical conception. It's the budding or germination of ideas. This is the Genesis ideas, where they're first arising, and it comes up in meditation. Meditation is one of the, perhaps the only safe method for bringing the Kundalini, the great serpent energy, up through the chakras to awaken the higher chakras. And here it's recommended in our Western occultism not to focus upon the chakras, not to put your attention on your third eye like some Indian teachings teach, but rather use these tarot keys and use your fishing for truth type of occult meditation. And this will bring the nerve force up from the reproductive centers without any fixation upon them or any attention to their reproductive function. So remember, these vast energies are very powerful. They can go up or they can go down. So they can be used safely, and they can as a tool for spiritual unfoldment. Towards the end of her life, while teaching the course Kabbalistic Doctrines of Sexual Polarity, Anne Davies said to us, "I incarnated on Earth to teach the spiritualization of the reproductive force." She said, it's hardly time for that. Most people, even speaking about the sexual function, it's like walking on eggshells, and it's going to upset people like crazy. But this is the vital force that, when lifted up into the higher centers, provides for your regeneration and enlightenment. So it is the same force that begets children, that begets thought in the mind. Remember, Mars in Scorpio and Mars in Aries, in the reproductive organs and in the head. The ruler of Aquarius is Saturn, the world. There's a little hint for us to meditate on. And Aquarius governs the ankles. Aquarian people are intuitive, and they really like things like occult research. When they can really concentrate, and they can really get research scientists. They're kind of naturally meditative, and they put their mind into things and figure things out in unusual ways. They'll come up with ideas that seem wacky and wonderful sometimes. The intelligence described in this key is the natural intelligence, which literally means to sink. Here you have the fishhook being lowered and sinking into the water. So the natural intelligence is the awareness of the hidden qualities of nature, which is arrived at by meditation. There's a little secret when you have a number in 2 digits like 1 and 7, you can add those up and it makes 8, which corresponds to the key 8 over here, the strength. So the solar energy that's shown in here is what's being drawn up through the chakras. So again and again throughout the tarot, you'll see that they're hinting to us that the mental and magical work is using an actual force that has definite physical expression. in its natural form, it creates new babies. That's pretty magical all by itself, man. But meditation modifies and transmutes your personal expression of that energy. And it balances here, you notice the 7 stars around this growing central sun. It balances the 7 chakras, the 7 energy centers in your body, which are the 7 inner planets of astrology. Again, if you do use meditation, avoid focusing inwardly upon any glands or centers in your body. Although that can create great changes, it's a dangerous method. And in India, if you're working with a guru, he's there full time and you're eating vegetarian, become more and more sensitive, and he can observe your subtle body and go, oops, time to stop that practice and do this one. So that the Indian technique can be much faster than the Western technique for unfolding consciousness. But it requires that you withdraw from the world and become an ascetic and a lot of things that we're Westerners, it's not our karma to do that. We're here to master and control the physical world. Look at our technology, good or bad, it's amazing. We are learning to control the powers of nature, not withdraw from them in order to unite with the higher intelligence. There's a wonderful phrase in fishing, angling. And this meditation is like mentally angling. You're reaching for an idea. And this little bay of water that she's standing on here, think of it like, San Francisco Bay or Monterey Bay. It's wrapped around with land, but it's open to the ocean, one part of it, like here to the left in the picture. So you have your personal subconsciousness that's filled with your ideas and experiences of this lifetime that's connected to the universal subconsciousness that we all share. So when you drop the hook into your own little personal subconsciousness, fish can come in out of the universal subconsciousness and give you a great wow and enlightenment. It's important when you get one of these flashes that you then recall it and do something with it. This is our muse here, the star. Look at Venus unveiled. It's from her that we receive our higher inspirations. And to honor the muse, you must do something with the inspirations you get. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. It's a flash in the pan. So you want to make use of those inspirations. Do something with them. If you have a beautiful vision and a dream, write it down or draw a little picture of it or make a song out of it. I dream in music, and it's like kind of my obligation to capture some of that music and turn it into songs. So make use of the intuitions that you receive, and the goddess will be generous with you and bring more. Okay. So this is our third stage of spiritual unfoldment. Let's go on to the next one. The moon. Now, that light we saw before up in the sky now has a face in it. We're becoming aware that light that is growing and now is taking on human aspect, a living aspect. And here we see the path of return, the yellow brick road going out of the waters, past the rocks, past the plants, between a wolf and a dog, between towers made by humans, and on up to the mountaintop in the distance. That's the path of return. And when we begin that path, we feel like a crawdad. Look at this creature down here. A crawdad has a hard outer shell, and it feels like it's inside and everything else is outside. Just like each of us in our young states of consciousness feel like we are inside of our skin and everything else is outside. And that's a seeming limitation for a lifetime, but it's the same self that's outside that is inside. That's the secret here. And notice the path goes between a dog and a wolf. The wolf is like complete nature, unrefined, and the dog is man's adaptation of nature. And that's what you could call the dog art. So the pathway is neither pure nature nor pure art. It goes in between and partakes of both. That's an important bit of information itself. The letter Kof here means the back of the head. And it even looks like the back of the head, the picture of it, which is the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. These are the part of the brains that we share with all the animals. The animals don't have so much forebrain unless you're looking at the cetaceans. But the back brain and the medulla, we share that with all the other different animals. And these are the parts of our brain that remain active while you're asleep. And sleep is one of the functions ascribed to the moon. So here we're talking about the back of the head, And so it's the next letter we're going to see, Resh, is the head itself, straight on. So here you see the back view. You have a side view here, so you're looking at the back of the figure and up above. Sleep is the function related to here. So something takes place in your sleep in which your spiritual development moves on into this fourth stage. And what is the fourth stage related to? Well, let's look at, for example, the alchemical stages. In the very first stage of bondage, you have to burn away your erroneous attitudes and attachments. And a good idea at that time is to observe carefully your life without judgment, just to stay aware and not get distracted. And it'll feel like everything is when you're at the first stage, it seems like everything is a lie, your personality is bullshit, and you get depressed. And then comes awakening. That's usually accompanied by a great loss or a disaster. The great awakening often comes like when you lose a beloved partner, or you lose your job, or your house burns down. It's a great disaster shown here. The lightning struck tower and burns it down, but it sets you free. And here's the time for you to, what happens is that all the things you've repressed come flooding up without your control. You start to see this stuff that's inside you. It's a very emotional state, the second stage. The third stage of revelation of the star, of meditation, is characterized by inner calm, where you can reflect upon the events of your life and face your fears so you can live your dreams. And you can separate what takes place in the stars. You filter out those things that are in your character and in your body that are not worthy and discard them. And you decide what to retain, and you grow and nurture them. So you have to consider your talents and your liabilities. What habits do I have that are keeping me back from my evolution, and letting go of those ones? And what habits do I have that are moving me forward on the path? You want to nourish those ones. At this stage, at the third stage, it's wise to start separating yourself from undesirable people, places, and things. The fourth stage of the moon, where we are now, you experience finding answers to your questions, and you have the opening up of the heart and sympathy and compassion. This is like the inner marriage of the conscious and the subconscious mind. There's no more shoulds and should nots. You find what suits you, and you honor your true self. Since this also represents the inner marriage, I want to talk a little bit about this. In my opinion, the esoteric church, our Christian church, has made the error of taking spiritual truths and interpreting them literally. The marriage that is spoken about in the Bible refers to the marriage of the conscious and the subconscious mind. You see them as children in the next key, the son, and then married with a child in the next key. The subconscious mind and this conscious mind cannot get together while we hold traumas, and while we hold fears, and while we hold negative emotions. These things prevent them from standing naked before one another, like in the next key. But I'm getting ahead. Let's stay here with the moon a little while longer. So this key, the moon, has to do with Pisces as an astrological sign and bodily awareness. The medulla and the cerebellum in the back of your brain control movement of the body. So a lot of these facts that take place in the darkness of subconscious, this was spoken of as being the nighttime, or when you're asleep, what takes place with the back of your head. So this refers to body consciousness, corporeal intelligence. And it's interesting that the word corporeal comes from a root meaning to rain upon. And look in this key, here you see all the little yods as raindrops coming down from the sky. This is the life force, the yod that's falling down upon them. So as I said, the shellfish, this crawdad climbing out of the pool, it's what we feel like in the early stages of our spiritual envelopment. You feel like you're isolated from everything else. You're stuck inside of your own body, separate from all. Interesting, notice how the path goes up and down and up and down and up and down, but overall it's going up. So you'll have on your own personal evolution times when you make progress and you notice it and it feels like you're falling backwards and things are getting worse for a while. That's normal. The oscillating path is a sine wave, but it goes overall, in the average, it goes uphill. But there will be times when it goes down and when your body is unhealthy and when you don't have energy And that's normal. Don't put yourself down because of it. It's a wave-like motion. And after a while, further up the path, you'll find that even at your most depressed state, it's going to be higher than it were some of your highs early on. And so in this stage, the knowledge that you got in meditation is incorporated into your physical body. And that takes place during sleep, ascribed to this key. This knowledge that gets built into us through studying the spiritual path is something that you can't inherit from your parents. It has to, so flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. You don't pass that on automatically to your children. Each person has to go through these steps to becoming an adept. You don't just inherit it because you're the king's son, as some religions or politics would have us think. Going on now, the sun. All right, now the beautiful light has a face facing straight towards us this time. And the conscious and subconscious mind are no longer hiding from one another. They're dancing together in a fairy ring. Notice that the subconscious mind is pushing back against the wall of the five senses. So she's, in a sense, repudiating the sensory data of the five senses. And the young boy is reaching out to new experience. And there's 5 sunflowers behind them, and 4 of them are open and facing them, but one of them is still closed and facing up to the sun. So we're coming along in our evolution. We aren't there yet, but we've got long stages along the way. The letter here, resh, means radiation. Look at the words that all start with R in English. Root, ravage, rage, rapunctious. They're all violence and active and outward bursting. And resh has to do with energy bursting out from a center, just like bursting out from the center of the sun. So resh means the face, the head and the face, the countenance. And here it's shown as this living sun. Exalted in Aries. The sun is the exalting planet Aries and the ruling planet of Leo. So it's the power that finds its highest manifestation in reason. Again, reason, the emperor. This is the constituting intelligence, that which defines how things are, defines the nature of the reality. And the sun, this wonderful power, has its highest expression there in the emperor. Assigned to the sun are the opposites of fruitfulness and sterility. Now, if you think about this, the sun is what causes everything to grow and be fruitful. It provides all of the energy for everything that happens on Earth, except for, I guess, radiation from radioactivity. But if you think of the substance of the planets was pulled out of the sun and its creation, then that's there too. So the sun is the source of all life. But too much sunlight makes deserts and it brings death. So fruitfulness and sterility are both assigned to this. It's the collective or the collecting intelligence. To symbol, to bring together, to modify, to combine, to bring, to synthesize. So this intelligence, in a sense, brings together all the things that we've studied before. It brings a new realization of personality. In this level of spiritual unfoldment, you become a spiritual teacher. You spread your truth. You confront with the worst shadows of yourself and of the race. And the compression, like the sun, how does the sun radiate? It compresses into a center until it explodes outwards. And this same process taking place in you. You compress all the things you know, and what comes out of that is a radiant new self. Here is the redemption of your shadow qualities, where you become the hero and you do good deeds and you can lead others. It's a potent and powerful state. And it's wise at this stage to literally deal with pain the moment it arrives. Suavely, be real, confront and resolve the issues of your life. Stalk them. Look at yourself and say, I'm still eating way too much sugar and I'm not getting enough greens into me. And then go out and do something to correct that. Make the change of it. I'm getting too many insects. I need to close the door here. There we go. So this 5th stage of spiritual unfoldment. So the four flowers that are open represent the 4 kingdoms of nature: mineral, vegetable, animal, human. But there's another one. There's something else that's for the final development. There's something beyond human that's being awakened here. So we're becoming a new creature at this stage. We're becoming different than the rest of humanity. And it's true. You know, the hermit who's back up on top of the mountain where the fool dove off of, he looks like he's quite separate from everything, but he has the hand of God on his head and his experience of consciousness and the kundalini, like his rod coming up, or going all the way up to his head. And he's inwardly experiencing union with all beings. Now notice the wall of bricks behind the kids. Stone, eben, is a wonderful word in Kabbalah, A-B-N. It combines A-B, father, and B-N, son, Ab and Ben. So the union of the Father and the Son is what's represented here. When, like Jesus referred to this when he said, I and the Father are one. Now, the 5 levels of the wall represent our 5 senses. And when we try to describe things in terms of words, we use the senses to describe them. But for experiences that go beyond the range of physical sensation, words don't do it. And so when mystics try to describe this state of consciousness, of what's demonstrated here in the sun, they have to use metaphor or symbolic language or erotic language. For most human beings, that melting into someone else and feeling you're more than just individual only happens during good quality sex. And so mystics often use sexual imagery, like the Song of Solomon, in order to describe the inner truth. And yet those who have tasted that awakening of the sun in their hearts find that it goes way beyond the union with a partner on the physical level. And there's no words to describe it. This is a degree of adeptship in this level, and there's some limitations, liberation from limitations of physical circumstances. It's where you consciously identify yourself with the one life. And you become as a child. Like in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to become as a child. It's not the end of the road, but it's an important stage. All right, we're having a wonderful time today. Let's get 2 more keys to look at here. This is an exciting one. Oh my gosh. Gabriel's blowing his horn, and this conscious and the subconscious mind are standing up out of 3-dimensional coffins at right angles to the 3 dimensions. That symbolizes 4th dimensional consciousness. And very interesting hint. You notice all the tarot keys, there's a number, a line, a name, a line, and a letter. The lines are missing here. There's no lines between 20 and Judgment and Sheen. That's a little hint here. The limitations have been removed. You're up at right angles to the normal 3-dimensional world. This is not a physical experience. You can tell that people are gray. They're not physical. And the conscious and subconscious mind have a kid. That's new. And the conscious mind, who's been the active partner the whole time, has his hands curled in his chest going, oh my God, looking up at the angel. And the subconscious, who's more the passive partner, is now the active one, receiving a great gift from the angel. And this is being brought about through sound vibration. Gabriel is blowing his horn. And the child is practicing what is called the fixation of the volatile. He's turning the water into a great iceberg in the distance. Well, this is an inner experience. But the letter here, Sheen, means tooth, maybe the serpent's fang, but it's also what you chew food up with. And the letter Sheen has the value of 300 as a number, which is also the number of Ruach Elohim, the life breath of the divine ones, the breath of God. It's what God breathes into the nostrils of Adam to make him come alive. So Sheen is like their teeth tear down food and break it up. What is represented here breaks up the seeming appearances of physical reality and reveals the truth. This is not the last stage of meditation, of spiritual unfoldment, but it's the next to the last stage where you have the vision of God face to face. Interestingly, the name of God in the Bible, Eheye, is shown a few times. Eheye simply means I am, without any predicate. At this level, God does not know who God is. There's just endless beingness. And when God separates from God's self and turns around and looks back, this is all symbolic. God, from this separated viewpoint, looks back at God's self and goes, "Oh my God, I am that God. I am that I am. I am the God. I am that I am, that one over there," as if from a separate position. Thus that Eheye Asher, Eheye, I am that I am, name of God in the Bible. See, much of what is involved in Kabbalah is the esoteric rendering of truths that are hidden in the words of the Old Testament. And it takes these tools in order to interpret them. This Cherokee is ascribed to the planet of Pluto, or Vulcan, and is ascribed to the perpetual intelligence. The perpetual intelligence also means eternity and is the experience of conscious immortality. This is when you have this experience, you have a flash of it, you go, "Oh my God, I am the eternal being who is all this. There was never a time when I was actually fully born or will I ever die." So it's awakening to your eternal nature. This is like the culmination of the things that have been going on in the keys before. So judgment is a completion, a termination. It's the final stage of personal consciousness. This is the last stage in which there is a conscious mind separate from a subconscious mind, observing the angel as if from a different viewpoint. Notice the woman makes arms kind of like the letter L. The child makes arms like the letter V. And the man makes arms like the letter X, LVX, light. We speak of light and extension in this school. And angel Gabriel is the archangel of the element of water. He has a blue robe on. Here we see water in the key. Here we see that on this next level of consciousness, everything is reversed. The subconscious mind is the active partner. The conscious mind is the passive partner. Everything is the opposite of how it appears. At this stage, the intellectual conviction that there is no separate existence between the individual self and the universal self is confirmed by fully fourth dimensional experiences, which blot out the delusion that you are a separate being and establish a perpetual awareness that you are the one who is all this. Okay, and now we're coming to the very last one, the world, this stage of evolution. Here's the world dancer. What you notice now, there's that light that became an angel is now you dancing in the center and dancing upon nothing, self-supporting, just like the sun doesn't stand on something in the sky. And there's a very important imagery for you. And here's the opposite spirals of involution and evolution in his, her hands. There's one male breast and one female breast. This is traditionally an androgyne figure. And this is Saturn, which is interesting. Tav is the last letter, the omega of the Hebrew alphabet. And it means a signature or a mark. The mark, when you draw an X for your signature because you can't write, that's Tav. Tav is that mark, is an X. And the Egyptian Tav cross was used for measuring the depth of the Nile River, and also for measuring right angles. And in Hebrew, it's the symbol of salvation from death and eternal life. So a signature represents a promise, a pledge, a guarantee. When you sign something, you're saying, I agree with what is above here. So this is the final seal and witness of the completion of the great work. Tav is in the center of the cube of space that we'll look at in advanced courses coming up. And the center is the palace of holiness in the midst, attributed to Tav. And it sustains all things. It's that thing in the middle from which everything else hangs, just like the sun hangs freely in space and the planets rotate around it. Saturn in mythology is the god who ate his own children. He absorbs its own expressions back into itself. Saturn is a planet of inertia, of concreteness, of heaviness, of law, of rules, of restriction. And it's exalted in key 11, justice. And it's the rules Aquarius, the star, and it rules Capricorn, key 15, the devil. So the power that's active in meditation, it's a source of apparent limitations, which make seek a way to escape from bondage. And it's expressed as equilibrium action, like in justice. That's our Saturn principle. And ascribed to it, like other planets, are a pair of opposites. Here are dominion and slavery. Wrong interpretation of the nature of reality is what puts us into slavery. Right interpretation is what sets us free. So you must learn the laws of nature and obey them in order to have freedom. The state of consciousness in this stage is the administrative intelligence. I didn't understand this much for a long time, but I've come to this conclusion. When you are expressing this state of consciousness, this final state of consciousness, you are a vehicle for the one will to express its desires in the world. For example, there are times when I'm talking with some soul and I hear myself saying things that I didn't know I knew, and I see their eyes go up, drinking in this knowledge. And I realize it's something, I only have a metaphor. It's kind of like their higher self tells my higher self what they need to hear, and my higher self inspires me to say it, and I say stuff that I didn't even know before. That's the administrative intelligence. It involves an active participation in what you might call cosmic government. And there's a great responsibility. You know, it's not a thing that you can take personal credit for. It happens through me when it happens. But I have to make myself ready and able and capable so that that inspiration can flow through me and do its work here on Earth. This key is called the world, but you might call it the universe. It's really, truly cosmic. Here you have the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac: Aquarius, Scorpio, Leo, and Taurus around the wreath of God. And the ellipse here is formed of 22 like buds of plants going around. So the 22 letters are represented here. And you have a figure 8 at the top and bottom holding it together. The same figure 8 you see over the magician and the woman in key 8. So they're red, they've been carried into action. And you have a one above and below. It's like the Hebrew or the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. So the dancer represents the merging of self-consciousness and subconsciousness. They're blending together into one superconsciousness. Now, what is the personal experience of this state of consciousness? Those who drop into this state of consciousness and return to being human say that it feels like the one self that is there is everywhere and all the time. And there's no sense of an individual. When you enter into this stage of consciousness, there's no you, there's no personality. When you return to being in your personal level again, all you can really hold in your brain is kind of like a cartoon picture of what happened. Beautiful cartoon picture, but still, your brain doesn't have the bandwidth to be able to grasp the universal. And yet the universal can find its expression through your brain when you are administrating the cosmic truth. Wow, so there we had a little view from bondage to freedom through the 7 stages of spiritual unfoldment. I'll get back to my question list. That was a lot longer than I expected to be blabbing today. See what we have down here. Kate's here. Oh, Christopher's here. I'm glad you found it, Christopher. Are there any questions you guys have before we close up? We went a whole hour. Long talk tonight. Tap into the chat here. What else might I share with you? While you're doing that, I'm going to put in one of my favorite pictures. Since it spoke of the 22 buds in the wreath of the tarot key of 21, I put the 22 tarot keys in. I really like this. So here's one of my creations to show you the world with all the 22 tarot keys. And I put the even ones on the right and the odd ones on the left, numbers. So let's see a few more chats. Oh, I see a heart. Thank you. Little bit of feedback. What would you like now? What else can we do? Scoot this over so you can see it a little better while we finish here. There it is. I don't see any chat. We're going to be finishing it up in a few minutes. If you have anything to add, thank you. Thank you for saying it was great. Any ideas, any questions, any comments? Let me tell you a little something about the inner school. We often hear about the inner school. What does that consist of? I think of it as like a river of consciousness filled with all of this wisdom of the ages. And when I riff like this, I'm dipping into that inner school and bringing up these wisdom teachings and formulating them with my conscious mind. In the sense, I'm updating the mysteries. And these updating that I'm doing by rendering them in my new conscious ideas, the conscious expression, is it goes back into the waters of the inner school that others can draw from in the future. So we are all in this together, and we all are sharing these great inner school. Thank you, Deborah. I really enjoy sharing these things. I don't even know what I'm going to choose for my topic for next week yet. I kind of like that. Like I didn't do a lot of preparation for this talk. I just reviewed stuff and let it bubble in my mind, and then I riff when I'm talking. And it's a fun way to teach. It allows me to be open enough to receive stuff that I didn't expect to share too. So thank you, everyone. I enjoyed this greatly. I'm going to edit the long pause I let in. I started really early to make sure everything was working. So I'm going to edit that and put this up online so you'll be able to see that. All right. Thank you, everybody. And it's a wonderful time. And we'll see you again next week. Good night.